More than 95% of our ocean floor has never been directly explored. Vast areas have never been seen firsthand, and much of the deep seafloor remains only partially mapped. We've sent cameras to comets, we've landed rovers on Mars, but right here, on our own planet, there's a version of Earth we've barely glimpsed. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of the seafloor beneath our own ships. Down there, past the reach of sunlight, is a world we've barely begun to document, a place where pressure alone would crush a submarine hull like a soda can. Today we're descending into that darkness to look at 9 things divers, submersibles, and hydrophones have actually found down there. Things that challenge what we expect to find in the deep ocean. Things we still can't fully explain, even with modern instruments and decades of research. By the end of this video, you'll understand why so many scientists say we know more about deep space than we know about our own backyard. Past 3,000 feet, there's no sunlight left at all. No plants, no color, just pressure, cold, and organisms that evolved to survive in near total darkness. Down here, food is scarce enough that entire species have reshaped their bodies around scarcity itself. In 2014, researchers captured one of the first confirmed videos of a live black sea devil anglerfish in its natural habitat, a moment marine biologists had waited decades to witness. A grotesque female drifted into view, a glowing lure dangling in front of a mouthful of translucent needle teeth. But the lure isn't the disturbing part. Attached to her body was a smaller shape, a tiny, shriveled male fused permanently into her skin. He'd lost his eyes. His organs had dissolved, all except the ones needed for reproduction. He existed only as a sperm-producing parasite, biologically merged into the female for the rest of his life, unable to detach even if he wanted to. This isn't a rare mutation. It's standard anglerfish mating, and isolation at that depth is so severe that evolution settled on permanent fusion as the only reliable way to guarantee reproduction at all. That same isolation produced an even stranger predator off the coast of Japan, where fishing nets occasionally pull up the goblin shark, a species so rarely seen alive that most footage of it exists only because it was caught by accident. This shark looks less like a fish, and more like something that should have decayed and kept moving anyway. Its skin isn't the usual shark gray. It's a soft, fleshy pink, close to the color of human skin. And when it attacks, its jaw doesn't simply open. It launches forward, unhinging away from the skull entirely, extending on a kind of internal sling before snapping shut around prey like a mechanical trap. Marine biologists call this slingshot feeding, and it happens in a fraction of a second, far faster than the shark's slow, almost lazy swimming style would suggest. Goblin sharks belong to an ancient lineage dating back more than 100 million years, a family line old enough to have shared the ocean with the last of the dinosaurs, quietly surviving multiple mass extinctions in the same dark water it still hunts in today. Not every deep-sea horror needs open water to hide in. Some bury themselves and wait, patient in a way few other predators can afford to be. In shallow coastal reefs around the world, the bobbit worm lies completely concealed in the sand, up to 10 feet long, with only 2 razor-sharp antennae exposed above the seabed, easily mistaken for a piece of coral debris. It doesn't chase. It doesn't need to. It simply waits, sometimes for days at a time, feeling for the faint vibration of something swimming close enough to reach. When a fish brushes past, the worm strikes in under 1/100th of a second, jaws closing with enough force to slice prey clean in half. Sometimes so fast that nearby divers only notice a small cloud of disturbed sediment where a living animal used to be. There's no warning, no visible predator. Just an empty patch of sand that, seconds earlier, held a creature capable of cutting a fish in two before it even registered a threat. Not everything unsettling down here is biological, though. Some of the coldest discoveries are things we put there ourselves and left behind. Chuuk Lagoon, in Micronesia, holds the wreckage of over 50 Japanese ships sunk during a single devastating air raid in 1943 that lasted less than 72 hours. Divers exploring these wrecks don't just find rusted metal and coral growth. They find gas masks, boots, and personal letters sealed inside bottles, some still legible after 8 decades underwater. In several wrecks, the remains of sailors are still exactly where they died, sealed inside engine rooms and sleeping quarters, undisturbed by looters or salvage crews for over 80 years. It isn't really a shipwreck site anymore. It's an underwater war grave, preserved almost exactly as it was left, making it one of the few places where recreational diving overlaps with a preserved wartime grave. A different kind of unease shows up off the coast of Florida, where divers exploring a stretch of deep wreck notice something that shouldn't really happen in near total darkness. Reef sharks, dozens of them, circling in a tight, coordinated formation, hunting cooperatively in conditions with almost zero visibility, relying on senses other than sight to stay in formation. Divers have reported an unusual pattern of coordinated circling that some have informally compared to a ballroom dance, the sharks moving in overlapping loops without colliding. In daylight, these sharks are typically solitary hunters, spreading out, competing for space and territory, avoiding each other, except to mate or scavenge. But down in the wreck's darkness, the behavior changes entirely. They stop competing. They start moving as a single unit, circling the wreck in tight, deliberate loops, as if the absence of light rewrites the rules they normally live by. Nobody has fully mapped out why, or whether the same behavior is happening in wrecks nobody has ever dived into. And then, there's a discovery that might be the most disturbing one on this list, precisely because it isn't a monster or a grave. In 2019, an explorer descended nearly 7 miles down into the deepest point on Earth, the Mariana Trench. A journey that took hours in a specially reinforced submersible built to survive crushing pressure. At the very bottom, past the reach of light and past the reach of almost all life, he found a plastic bag, sitting undisturbed, perfectly preserved, in the most remote environment on the planet, alongside candy wrappers scattered nearby. We've managed to contaminate the one place on Earth that humans have barely ever physically reached, a trench deeper than Everest is tall, before we'd even finished mapping it properly. Some of the ocean's creepiest discoveries were never seen at all. They were only heard. In 1997, hydrophones built to detect Soviet submarines picked up an enormous, ultra-low-frequency sound in the Pacific, loud enough to be detected by sensors 3,000 miles apart. Far beyond the range of any known animal call, researchers nicknamed it the Bloop. For years, its acoustic signature resembled something biological, but on a scale no known animal could realistically produce, which fueled genuine scientific interest in an unidentified creature living somewhere in the deep, possibly a species never cataloged at all. In 2005, researchers finally matched the sound to large ice quakes near Antarctica, ice cracking under its own weight as it shifted. And that explanation is now widely accepted, closing one of the ocean's stranger open cases, even if it took nearly a decade to get there. Off the coast of Japan lies a formation that raises a very different kind of question: the Yonaguni Monument, a massive underwater rock structure made of sharp right angles, straight edges, and stepped terraces that resemble a submerged pyramid rising from the seafloor. Most geologists argue it's a natural formation, shaped by fracture lines common to the sandstone in that region, a process that can produce surprisingly geometric results. A smaller group of researchers insist those angles are too clean and too deliberate to be coincidence, pointing to features that resemble carved steps and channels. Nobody has definitively settled the disagreement either way. If it's natural, it's one of the strangest coincidences geology has ever produced. If it isn't, this structure was built long before written history as we know it began, submerged by rising sea levels thousands of years later. And finally, since 1991, hydrophones scattered across the Pacific have periodically picked up a strange, rising wail that scientists named the Upsweep. It repeats seasonally, every year, rising and fading in a pattern that has held steady for over 3 decades, loud enough to be tracked across entire ocean basins. Its exact source has never been confirmed. The leading theory points to underwater volcanic activity, seafloor vents shifting and venting gas in deep, unexplored basins. But no research vessel has ever traced the sound back to a single confirmed point on the seafloor, despite decades of listening. The sound is almost certainly still repeating today, even though its exact source has yet to be confirmed. We've sent probes to the edges of our solar system and photographed galaxies billions of light years away, yet the majority of our own ocean floor remains completely unmapped and unexplained, closer to us than any star and still less understood. Every discovery on this list was found by accident. A stray sonar ping, a lucky camera angle, a hydrophone that happened to be running at the right moment. Which means for every creature, wreck, and echo we've documented, there are almost certainly more still waiting, undisturbed, in places no light has ever reached and no submersible has ever gone. Now tell us, which of these 9 gave you the biggest chills? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to keep exploring the darkest, most unexplained corners of our world with us, subscribe, because the ocean isn't finished, revealing what it's hiding.